What is up? Welcome to my channel. My name is Franca and I'm glad you're here. Same day, different section of lawsuit. Let's get straight into it. Mr. Baldoni launched Wayfair Studios along with Mr. Swartz in 2020. Mr. Heath serves as Wayfair's chief executive officer. Mr. Swartz is a leading financier of Wayfair, and he, Mr. Heath, Mr. Baldoni are all close personal friends. Under the Wayfair banner, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath have platforms including the Man Enough podcast, which they co-host. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath have positioned Wayfair as a male feminist platform that explores gender roles and dismantles toxic masculinity, creates a safer and judgment-free society for women. Mr. Baldoni serves not only as the co-founder and co-chairman of the studio that financed and ran production on It Ends With Us, but he also served as director, executive producer, and co-lead actor. As studio head and director, all actors, crew, and staff on the film, including Miss Lively, answered to Mr. Baldoni. In his words, he was the leader, who sat at the top of the totem pole. While Sony was the distributor releasing the film, Wayfair was responsible for the production, and Wayfair was led by Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. Production of the film began in early May 2023 and lasted until it was suspended in mid-June 2023 due to the Writers Guild of America strike. During that time, Miss Lively and other cast and crew experienced invasive, unwelcome, unprofessional, and sexually inappropriate behavior by Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. Because Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath held all leadership positions on the production, they answered to no one and brushed off or ignored the concerns Miss Lively and others pressed. If this goes to court, I'm interested because in this claim, it's claiming that there were others. It wasn't just Blake Lively, it was others. So I'm interested why no one else is part of this lawsuit, suing or anything, you know what I mean? Because Blake has a lot of people in as defendants in this case, because in this case Blake is suing a bunch of people, right? So I wonder why there's not other people with Blake that is suing. If there's other people who felt uncomfortable, why are they not suing with her? You know what I mean? No one else has made any other lawsuits or anything like that, which I feel is a little weird to me because if I was complaining about something and someone was filing a lawsuit, that's a little weird to me because I feel they would have added more people to the lawsuit. If you know what I mean, unless they're just gonna call them as witnesses. That's a little strange to me because I feel if there was other people were being inappropriately treated at work, should they also not reap the benefits of this lawsuit? You know what I mean? That's a little weird to me. Wayfair failed to adhere to guild rules as well as Miss Lively's contract and standard industry safety protocols with respect to nudity and intimate scenes, which the Screen Actors Guild and the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists acknowledges place performers in uniquely vulnerable situations. Such safeguards ignored by Wayfair included providing performers with appropriate notice of nudity and simulated sex, and ensuring that consent is given free of pressure or coercion. Signed nudity riders are in place, spelling out the parameters of nudity or simulated sex scenes. Safe and secure working conditions that are not detrimental to a performer's health, safety, and morals and career. And the use of intimacy coordinators to observe intimate scenes. See, that's weird to me because there is an interview of Blake Lively saying that they had an intimacy coordinator in the press thing. So it's weird to say that this was something that they should have had and they didn't in the lawsuit. But what I guess they're fighting over right now is, I think what Blake Lively's side is saying is the intimacy coordinator wasn't a thing until after they signed that notice of work or something, whatever it was called. And Justin's saying we had an intimacy coordinator the whole time, so I don't know what's going on. So that's kind of, I feel what each side is saying. So I don't know who to trust. I would like to know who the intimacy coordinator was, and I think we should hear from her. Without these protections in place, Mr. Baldoni improvised physical intimacy that had not been rehearsed, choreographed, or discussed with Miss Lively, and no intimacy coordinator involved. For instance, Mr. Baldoni discreetly bit and sucked on Miss Lively's lower lip during a scene in which he improvised numerous kisses on each take. Mr. Baldoni insisted on shooting the full scene over and over again, well beyond what would have been required on any ordinary set, without advance notice or consent. That's valid. If he was doing that, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that. Why is that happening? On another occasion, Mr. Baldoni and Miss Lively were filming a slow dance scene for a montage in which no sound was recorded. Mr. Baldoni chose to let the camera roll and have them perform a scene, but did not act in character as Raoul. Instead, he spoke to Miss Lively out of character as himself. At one point, he leaned forward and slowly dragged his lips from her ear and down to her neck as he said, "It smells so good." None of this was remotely in character or based on any dialogue in the script, and nothing needed to be said because, again, there was no sound. I just found an error in this lawsuit. and it makes the sentence make no sense. I'm gonna read this out to you and then I'm gonna like actually show you so you know I'm not just being mean. Mr. Baldoni was caressing Mr. Lively with his mouth in a way that had nothing to do with their roles. I hope he wasn't caressing Mr. Lively. Because if Ryan was there, that'd be a little weird. But yeah, here, let me show you. I don't know if I'm allowed to show you this, so like ignore all of this. Right there. I just find that so funny because like someone's like A-list lawyer was writing this and I don't think they noticed that. Has anybody else noticed that? Am I like the first person to notice that? I haven't heard anyone say anything about that. It's just weird that I caught it because normally I don't like catch any of this stuff. When Miss Lively later objected to this behavior, Mr. Baldoni's response was, "I'm not even attracted to you." See, I don't know if I believe that because to be honest, the "I'm not even attracted to you" is such a guy thing to say the second you like turn him down. So I don't know. I'm on the fence about that one. After Miss Lively signed on to the movie based on a draft of the script, Mr. Baldoni, without Miss Lively's knowledge or consent, personally added graphic content, including a scene in which Miss Lively was to orgasm on camera. That's weird. That's valid. I would complain about that too. When Miss Lively objected to these additions, Mr. Baldoni insisted he had added them because he was making the film through the female gaze, although he agreed to remove the scenes. He made a last-ditch attempt to keep one in which the couple orgasmed together on their wedding night, which he said was important to him because he and his partner climaxed simultaneously during intercourse. Mr. Baldoni then intrusively asked Miss Lively whether she and her husband climaxed simultaneously during intercourse, which Miss Lively found invasive and refused to discuss. See, this makes me wonder where it says he like tried to keep in a scene. I wonder if that's why she decided she was gonna do the final cut of the movie. On the day of shooting the scene in which Miss Lively's character gives birth, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath suddenly pressured Miss Lively to simulate full nudity, despite no mention of nudity for the scene in the script, her contract, or in her previous creative discussions. Mr. Baldoni insisted to Miss Lively that women give birth naked, and that his wife had ripped her clothes off during labor. He claimed it was not normal for women to remain in their hospital gowns while giving birth. Miss Lively disagreed but felt forced into a compromise that she would be naked from below the chest down. When the birth scene was filmed, the set was chaotic, crowded, and utterly lacking in standard industry protections for filming nude scenes, such as choreographing the scene with an intimacy coordinator, having a signed nudity rider, or simply turning off the monitors to a scene that was not broadcasted to all crew on set, and on their personal phones and iPads. I don't know how sets work, but why is it being showed to people's personal phones and iPads? Mr. Heath and Mr. Baldoni also failed to close the set, allowing non-essential crew to pass through while Miss Lively was mostly nude, with her legs spread wide in stirrups, only a small piece of fabric covering her genitalia. Among the non-essential persons present that day was Wayfair co-chairman Mr. Schwartz, who flew in for one of his few set visits. Miss Lively was not provided with anything to cover herself with in between takes until after she had made multiple requests. Miss Lively became even more alarmed when Mr. Baldoni introduced his best friend to play the role of the OBGYN, when ordinarily a small role of this nature would be filled by a local actor. Miss Lively felt the selection of Mr. Baldoni's friend in this intimate role, in which the actor's face and hands were in close proximity with her nearly nude genitalia for a birth scene, was invasive and humiliating. I guess that's fair. I heard some people saying that for like small roles like this, they usually hire like local actors. To add insult to injury, Mr. Heath approached Miss Lively and her assistant on set and started playing a video of a fully nude woman with her legs spread apart. Miss Lively thought he was showing porn content and stopped him. Mr. Heath explained that the video was his wife giving birth, and Miss Lively was alarmed and asked Mr. Heath if his wife knew he was sharing the video, to which he replied she isn't weird about this stuff, as if Miss Lively was weird for not welcoming it. Miss Lively and her assistant excused themselves, stunned that Mr. Heath had shown them a nude video. Mr. Baldoni added a detailed scene to the film in which the underage version of Miss Lively's character, Lily, loses her virginity. In both the book and the script for the film, there was no sex scene. Instead, the details about this moment were left to the audience's imagination. But Mr. Baldoni added in considerable details, including both dialogue between young Lily and her boyfriend Alice about losing her virginity, as well as a simulated sex scene in which Mr. Baldoni filmed and included in his initial cut of the film a close-up of young Lily's face accompanied by an audible gasp at the moment of penetration. Miss Lively was informed that when the scene was shot, Mr. Baldoni called cut. He walked over to the actress and said, "I know I'm not supposed to say this, but that was hot. And did you two practice before this?" If that happened, that's weird. But the way they put underage version of Miss Lively's character, I feel like if you're not paying attention enough, you're going to think the character that plays younger Lily is underage, which she's not. She's older than me. She's 23. But it's the character, not the actual actor. But yeah, if he's saying that things after like the scene, that's really weird and should not be happening on a set. During a car ride with Miss Lively, her assistant and driver, Mr. Baldoni claimed to Miss Lively that he had been sexually abused by a former girlfriend, which he has since shared publicly. At the end of the story, Mr. Baldoni shared that it had caused him to re-examine his past. Then he said, "Did I always ask for consent? No. Did I always listen when they said no? No." Mr. Bald claimed this was an example of how we all have things from which we can learn and grow. Miss Lively was unsettled by Mr. Baldoni's suggestion had engaged in sexual conduct without consent. Miss Lively exited the car, her driver immediately remarking that he did not want Miss Lively to be alone with Mr. Baldoni going forward. On the first day of production, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath described their past sex relationships to Miss Lively, including that one of them used to hook up with a woman. Mr. Baldoni said that he had decided the woman wasn't the one. So then Mr. Heath had gotten together with her. Miss Lively found this description of passing along women to be disrespectful and disturbing. But that doesn't seem like too bad to me. If someone told me that, I'd be like, okay, whatever. That might be to you. Personally, I don't find that like absolutely appalling and crazy. You know what I mean? Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath often spoke of their previous porn addictions. Mr. Baldoni would often reference pornography to Miss Lively. Hoping to shut the subject down, she said to him privately that she had never seen it. Later, when Mr. Baldoni was once again referencing his experience with pornography, he revealed in front of other cast and crew that Miss Lively had never seen porn. It was incredibly invasive of her privacy to discuss any aspect of her intimate life with the cast and crew, much less reveal something that she had only told Mr. Baldoni to try to get him to stop talking about the subject with her. That's fair. Mr. Baldoni engaged in other behaviors that were shocking and emotionally distressing. For example, he claimed he could speak to the dead and on several occasions told her that he had spoken to her dead father. It was off to claim a personal relationship with her recently deceased father. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath were also constantly hugging and touching cast and crew. When Miss Lively or others avoided this touching, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath would retaliate by becoming irritated, cold, and uncollaborative. The result was an unwelcoming environment for Miss Lively, her employees, and other cast on set. Once again, who are her employees? I think she's just talking about her assistant. Because earlier she described her assistant and her driver. But like, who else are her employees? I want to know, is she just talking about those two? Or like other people? Mr. Baldoni often referred to women in the workplace as sexy. When they expressed discomfort, Mr. Baldoni would deflect to try to pass it off, which undermined Miss Lively and others' concerns. For example, on one occasion that Miss Lively observed, he told a female cast member that her leather pants looked sexy when she arrived on the set. When she rebuffed his comment because she was uncomfortable, rather than apologizing, he brushed it off with a, "I can say that because my wife is here today." Miss Lively felt embarrassed witnessing this kind of commentary, as others did. That's a little weird to me. And to be honest, I can totally see guys saying that. Like, that's something that I feel like they've said before. On another day, Miss Lively wore a low-cut dress to facilitate breastfeeding, but had it covered up with a coat. When the jacket briefly popped open at one point to reveal the dress, Mr. Baldoni commented on how much he liked her outfit, which flustered Miss Lively. Later that day, Mr. Baldoni pressured Miss Lively, who was in her pre-approved wardrobe, to remove her coat in front of the crew and multiple background actors in a packed bar. He said he wanted to see her onesie under the coat because it was zipped low to reveal her lace bra. Consistent with the past practice, he said, "I think you look sexy," in a tone that made her feel oogled and exposed. With other female cast present, she said, "That's not what I'm going for." He bristled and replied, "I'm sorry, hot." Deeply uncomfortable, Miss Lively said, "Not that either." Mr. Baldoni responded sarcastically, "I guess I missed the HR meeting," and walked away. Another woman on production spoke to Miss Lively afterward to offer empathy and to share her own similar experiences with Mr. Baldoni commenting on her in sexual terms. As a result of Mr. Baldoni's behavior, on May 29, 2023, another cast member lodged an sex harassment complaint about Mr. Baldoni's gross and unwanted comments towards her and others. I haven't heard anything about that complaint, so I wonder if that complaint's gonna come up. or someone's gonna like release that complaint or anything. While on one hand, Mr. Baldoni was objectifying Miss Lively as an sex object, on the other hand, he went out of his way to message criticisms of her age and weight, neither of which she could change during filming. On the second day of filming, for example, Mr. Baldoni made the rest of the cast and crew wait for hours while he cried in Miss Lively's dressing room, claiming social media commenters were saying that Miss Lively looked old and unattractive based on paparazzi photos from the set. I don't remember when this came out that people were calling her old and unattractive. I think they were saying her wardrobe was absolutely freaking atrocious because that is like the ugliest wardrobe I've ever seen on a set. Like, absolutely not. There was no need for any of those outfits. I remember everyone commenting on the fashion. I didn't see or hear anyone say anything about her being old and unattractive. She tried to reassure him that she should look authentic in the scenes depicted in the photos, which were just after her character had been abused by her fictional husband, rather than hot. Mr. Baldoni, however, appeared focused on Miss Lively's sex appeal above all else. His lengthy outburst caused a delay in shooting, forcing an emotional scene to be shot haphazardly. To make matters worse, when Miss Lively tried to have a meeting with Mr. Heath and other producers to discuss Mr. Baldoni's unprofessional behavior described above, that meeting turned into yet another violation. Rather than an ordinary meeting time and place, Mr. Heath arrived unannounced at Miss Lively's hair and makeup trailer while she was topless and having body makeup removed by a makeup artist. You know what I don't understand? What's weird? Maybe I just like don't understand the movie industry. But when did she I watched the film a couple days, maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago. But like, what do they mean body makeup? Like, what body makeup did she have on in this film? Like, I don't understand. Like, there was nothing that I can like think of in my head, any scene where she needed something like body makeup, unless they automatically put body makeup on you. I have no idea how that works. But I want to know like what body makeup are they talking about? Miss Lively told Mr. Heath that she was almost done and that they could meet once she was clothed. Mr. Heath, however, insisted that if she didn't allow him into her trailer to speak to him at the moment, there would be no meeting with the other producers. Miss Lively reluctantly agreed, but asked that Mr. Heath keep his back turned. A few minutes into the conversation, Miss Lively noticed that Mr. Heath was staring directly at her while she was topless. When she called him out, Mr. Heath brushed it off as a habit of wanting to look at the person while speaking to them. Miss Lively and her hair and makeup artist were deeply disturbed by the interaction on just the second day of filming. That's fair. Why are you in my dressing room talking to me when I'm shirtless? Throughout filming, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath invaded Miss Lively's privacy by entering her makeup trailer uninvited while she was undressed, including when she was breastfeeding her infant child. Miss Lively often had to work while breastfeeding, which she felt comfortable doing so long as she was given the time and space to cover herself. She did this frequently because she was not given breaks to feed her baby. But Miss Lively did not expect or consent to anyone entering her private spaces while topless, exposed, and vulnerable with her newborn, or during body makeup application or removal. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath both showed a shocking lack of boundaries by invading her personal space while she was undressed and vulnerable. Mr. Baldoni also routinely degraded Miss Lively by finding back-channeled ways of criticizing her body and weight. A few weeks before filming began, and less than 4 months after Miss Lively had given birth to her fourth child, Miss Lively was humiliated to learn that Mr. Baldoni secretly called her fitness trainer without her knowledge or permission, and implied that he wanted her to lose weight in 2 weeks. Mr. Baldoni told the trainer that he had asked because he was concerned about having to pick Miss Lively up in a scene for the movie, but there was no such scene. See, this says implied that he wanted her to lose weight in 2 weeks. Did he say, I need Blake to lose weight in 2 weeks? Because if he just said something that made her feel like she needed to lose weight in 2 weeks, I feel like that point is like not important, because unless he said, Blake, I need Blake to lose weight in 2 weeks is crazy. But you know what else is funny? I was like watching past interviews she did, and she also did the shallows after pregnancy. She also said she had 8 weeks to lose all the baby fat. And she was talking about her fitness trainer and like naming him, and I assume that that's probably still her fitness trainer. But she said he like kicked her butt and she was back in shape after 8 weeks. When Miss Lively caught strep throat, Mr. Baldoni offered as a gift to connect her with an expert he had on retainer to help her with probiotics and to combat the sickness. When Miss Lively went to fill out the privacy form, she saw the expert was not what Mr. Baldoni had represented her to be, but instead a weight loss specialist. That's crazy. Miss Lively felt once again that Mr. Baldoni was shaming her for her body and weight. That's crazy. That's crazy. If he did that, that's crazy. Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath failed to implement COVID protocols when there was a COVID outbreak on set. Miss Lively was told by another producer that because Wayfair did not have insurance coverage for COVID, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath deliberately withheld from Miss Lively that she had been exposed to COVID. Both Miss Lively and her infant child contracted COVID from the outbreak. That's fair. That child's immune system is not good enough to handle that. So I would be pissed too if me and my child both got COVID because of this. As the studio producing the film, Wayfair was the employer of all the cast and crew and was thus responsible for assuring workplace safety on set. However, Wayfair failed to provide Miss Lively with even rudimentary employment protections, such as an employee handbook, SEX harassment policy, information or any training on SEX harassment, discrimination, or respectful workplace expectations. Wayfair also failed to provide Miss Lively information about the process and procedure for filing human resources. As the producer and owner of the film, Wayfair was legally obligated to address HR-related concerns or complaints. To Miss Lively's knowledge, however, Wayfair lacked any process for responding to complaints about its leadership, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath, who plainly were not going to investigate themselves. On May 26, 2003, Miss Lively told a representative of Sony that she wanted to file an HR complaint about Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath's misconduct. The Sony representative told Miss Lively that Sony, as the distributor of the film, was not empowered to control Mr. Baldoni or Mr. Heath's behavior on set, and that such concerns must be raised with Wayfair, the studio responsible for the production. Wayfair, Mr. Baldoni, and Mr. Heath received or were aware of a number of HR grievances regarding their conduct. However, for example, on the first day of filming, while attempting to hug Miss Lively's employee, Mr. Heath said, "I don't even know if we're allowed to do this. It's day one, and we have an HR report already." But it doesn't. The fact that he says that, I feel like doesn't mean much because we don't know what that HR complaint was. You know what I mean? I heard that there was an HR complaint about someone saying they're being ageist for not putting him in, and they put a younger guy. So I guess it could have been that. You don't know what that complaint about was, but obviously it's saying we already have an HR complaint. It does sound a little bad in this situation. Additionally, earlier in the production, another actress made a complaint about Mr. Baldoni's comments on her appearance. Mr. Baldoni expressly acknowledged her concern in writing, stating he would adjust accordingly. Yet on June 8, 2023, the actress informed Miss Lively that outside of anything in the scene, I actually cannot talk to Justin at all. Mr. Baldoni later expressed suspicion regarding Miss Lively's friendship with this actress, as if they were colluding against him. As described above, Miss Lively and others attempted to raise concerns to Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath regarding certain of the conduct described above during filming, but they were not addressed given the futility of asking Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath to address their own behavior. After unsuccessfully attempting to raise concerns with Sony, Miss Lively expressly told Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath that there were serious HR problems on set. Mr. Heath responded that they knew, implying that someone had mentioned to them that Miss Lively had raised concerns. In response, Mr. Heath told Miss Lively that he had thought she wanted to see the nude video of his wife. In the same conversation, when Miss Lively expressed her upset, Mr. Heath and Mr. Baldoni had hidden the fact that she had been exposed to COVID outbreak on set, from which she and her infant contracted COVID. Instead of acknowledging responsibility and committing to safety moving forward, they expressed upset over the production days missed and resulting costs. Despite receiving multiple detailed reports by Miss Lively and others about Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath's misconduct, Wayfair failed to investigate those reports or to otherwise institute protections for the cast. This is so even though the incidents discussed above, among others, did not take place in isolation, and many and many, if not all, were witnessed by others. By these and other behaviors, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath and Wayfair engaged in harassment conduct and failed their obligations to investigate complaints of workplace harassment, to prevent inappropriate and harassing behaviors on set, and to provide avenues for cast and crew members to safely raise concerns to neutral parties so that they could be investigated and appropriately addressed. Alright, I think we're gonna end it there for this video. If you guys enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and comment down below. If you didn't, feel free to leave a hate comment. I'd love to hear your opinion, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.